Welcome back to another episode of the Downsizing Roadmap podcast with your hosts, Jody Roscoe and Heather Fisher. We're talking about all things downsizing, from our own experiences with clients to guest experts. Let's make downsizing easier, one conversation at a time.
Hi, welcome back to another episode of the Downsizing Roadmap podcast. I'm Heather Fisher.
And I'm Jody Roscoe.
And we are talking today about the myth of the perfect time.
The perfect time.
Yes. I will do this after fill
in
in
the
the blank.
We've heard all kinds of things that people will do it after.
After I retire, after the holidays, after the winter, after the spring,
after
again and again and again. So we're going to talk about how that's really a myth. There is no perfect time, and that starting is never a bad thing. It gets you ready for when the necessary time comes up.
Yeah, I think that someday, tomorrow, all of those, I'm getting ready to get ready, like all of that stuff is just procrastination, and it's probably because you're feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Or there's some fear around what that future holds, and so not doing it seems like it's a safe bet. But what we found is that you don't have to even move. You can just get yourself ready so that it feels so much better.
Yeah.
And there's things that are bothering you in your mind that you don't even realize are bothering you because you know things need to be done and you're not doing them. And that's heavy all on its own.
Yeah. And once you're ready, you may find like, okay, that's what I was waiting for. Now I'm not overwhelmed, and I would love to go much sooner than where I had been saying, oh, it'll be 2 years, 5 years. We find that a lot with people that we meet in our classes when we say, are you thinking about downsizing? Oh, yeah, but it's a few years down the road. And we ask why, and that's ill-defined, just various reasons, but always just kind of a delay. And then when they get through the class or maybe talk to us or maybe get started, then it's like, okay, this is manageable. And there was a reason I was seeking out downsizing information and something wasn't working. And now I feel good about moving or making something better.
And really what you're doing is you're just delaying getting to your future, whatever that looks like, whatever exciting thing you want to do there, whether that's be closer to your kids or have more time because you're not mowing your giant lawn or whatever that looks like. You're just delaying getting to that future that you're going to enjoy once you get there. And I promise you will. So many people that we've had have done this are so happy once they have reduced the things in their life and the stress in their life.
I think it points out, it reiterates the importance of not skipping that step one of being dreamy, because if you were planning a fantastic vacation, you wouldn't just spend years planning it and never, book a plane ticket and just not, because you're excited about it. You want to go tour whatever and look at whatever and stay wherever. But when you don't make it dreamy at the beginning of your downsizing path, you are delaying that because you're not finding that reward at the end of what's going to be better.
And that's such a good analogy because I actually think people spend a lot more time planning a vacation than they do planning their whole future.
Yeah.
Absolutely. They figure out and they do some research and they figure out where they want to go and what they want to do when they get there and
compare costs and look for a value.
Right. And so they do all of that. But when you're thinking about what's my future going to look like, people just are like, ooh, that sounds scary. Let's not figure that out. And then you just end up, that's still a choice. You're making a choice, but you might not like where you end up if you're not trying to plan it.
Yeah, I see that. And I think that, like you said at the beginning, fear plays into that, but being dreamy is another way to alleviate those fears. Being dreamy and go touring houses or condos or, senior living communities, whatever that looks like. When you take the fear of the unknown out, you can then get dreamy and be like, I really would love to live there, wherever it was that you went. And then the tasks to get there become clearer as to how and what and when.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if you don't do that part, it's really hard to get started. If you don't know what that future is going to look like, it's very, very hard to motivate yourself to change it.
Yeah.
So spend that time, do that, and there again, no perfect. Today is the myth of the perfect time. There's no perfect time to figure that out. Just like there wasn't a perfect time to have a baby, or change your job, or any of those things that have happened in your life possibly. But it's just you do it, and then you reap the benefits of whatever that is.
Yeah, and you're excited about it, and it becomes wonderful things in your life, of course. Yeah, I think that when you're waiting for the perfect time, it ends up doing it, as we've said many times, in crisis time.
Yeah.
And so both of those are extremes. Let's just go with the down the middle path and get ready, and then do it when it makes sense.
Because I think a lot of times people don't understand what they're missing, or they don't understand. Like, when it eventually happens, it's this painful, crazy thing because they are doing it from a place of crisis, and it didn't have to be that, and they don't understand that it didn't have to be that because they didn't see it a different way. But we see it all kinds of different ways, and so our goal is to try to make sure that it doesn't have to be that, because it really doesn't have to be that. And it doesn't have to be that for you, and it doesn't have to be that for your family. Any of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we saw that with my family and my parents being in a house that wasn't, was a 2-story and just difficult for both my mom at various times and my dad for sure with mobility issues. And, it just got to a point where it was delayed so much that then it had to be rushed when it just didn't work at all for my dad. And that's so hard on my mom. It's hard on us kids trying to help. And, I'm sure hard on my dad to, not have a say in, where he's going to live, because you're just in that crisis moment. And so, the reasons for waiting suddenly become, I just wish I would have already done this, because then it's too hard in that moment to do it the right way, the slow way, the perfect way. So I think if we can encourage people to just make those plans, have a plan A, a plan B. If plan A is I want to stay in my house, forever, that's a great plan A if that's what you want to do, but it doesn't stop you from having a plan B and a plan C ready in your back pocket,
and having the house be in a position that can work. Like that if you had to go to plan B, nobody wants to have to do that. But if you did, because we don't have the crystal ball of what our lives are going to look like. But if you did, that would be an easy transition. So that's the goal, is to make sure that you can have an easy transition, whether it's like, hey, I'm ready to, trade my larger house in for a smaller house now, and we can do the things that we need to do that. Or nope, this house still will fit for me, but you still have things to do to make it an easy transition in the future.
And I think you start pushing that can down the road a lot of times while maybe things still are working for you reasonably well. Mm-hmm. But you kick the can so far down the road that you look around and nothing is working where you are, but you haven't moved the other things down the road, just kicked the can. So
I think our favorite is where we have clients where the couples decide, proactively, hey, this is what I want to do, and they work together, and the family can come in, and there's time to spend to do that, and then they moved to a smaller place, and it was both of their decisions together. Like, they could make all of those decisions together, and I love it when we get to see that.
Yeah, and when they get to that new place, because they've planned so well and moved it down the road, they're able to enjoy that new place in a much different, that new lifestyle in a much different way. And you will never, even if you're not ready to move yet, if you do all these other steps to get ready, you will not regret it.
It's true.
Because
you won't.
If you are in your house and you've done all these things to be ready, like your daily
good.
workload will be lighter. Your distraction from all the clutter will be lighter. You'll be, breezing through because your paperwork's in order. I mean, it is a great way to live.
Yeah, you're not going to leave a mess to your kids or your family, whoever is left. I think I see that the most, the people who get themselves ready together early often are people whose parents did not, and they had to go deal with their houses and their estates and their whole situation. And the words I hear the very most from those people are, I'm not doing this to my kids or my family. I'm not doing this to them.
Yeah.
And so so they've learned from their own,
stopping that cycle.
And so I love this quote that kind of speaks to our topic, the myth of the perfect time today, which is from Arthur Ashe, and it's start where you are, use what you have, do what you can.
Yeah.
And so you're not going to be perfect. You're not going to be in the perfect health. You're not going to have the perfect time. It's not going to be the beautiful, perfect sunny day. Just start where you are. Use what you have, do what you can. I love that.
Yeah. Always moving forward in the right direction always gets you where you want to go. So, yeah, we have a stat here as well, talking about waiting, and it says more than 1 in 4 older adults, 27% who moved, did so due to a sudden health condition or disability. So I think that talks to, waiting for that perfect time then becomes crisis time. So sudden illness or a fall or injury or the death of one spouse or the need to move closer to your children, where all of those things, in all honesty, could maybe be the odds of them happening could be diminished if you're finding a place where you're safe and less fall hazards, less, more help from your family. So doing it early also prevents those things from happening because you're putting yourself in a safer,
less stressful
easier environment. Mm-hmm.
I agree. A lot of times we'll end up helping people when there's been, some kind of a, illness, some kind of a problem that they've gotten I can't think of the right word. But they've gotten a
diagnosis.
There it is. Diagnosis from the doctors of something that might even be a long-term thing. But it still kind of puts them in a different place where they're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now we have to do it. And then nobody does it perfectly.
Right.
So waiting to do it perfectly isn't ever going to happen because no matter what, you aren't doing it perfectly, but you can do it with less stress without those, those illness, injury, death, those kind of things also hanging over you.
Yeah, managing too much at once with a health issue and trying to downsize at the same time or needing to move for one or the other. If you have a couple and one has an injury, they're not going to be able to physically do as much. We see that too. And that's where, just learning about the resources that can help you can make that better and make an imperfect time become easier.
Yeah. So costs of waiting too long, people are forced sometimes to move at their most vulnerable with little time to repair, to prepare for that. Also, what gets lost when downsizing happens under duress? Sentimental items get tossed because it's just too much to think about. Yeah. Stories get lost. That absolutely happened in my life. Families are made to make rushed decisions. Sometimes the kids are deciding for the parents instead of the parents actually being able to make their own decisions.
Yeah.
And sometimes those decisions feel so harried and stressful because, hey, we're in the hospital. You have an hour to figure out what rehab place you're going to.
We have been there, and that's very stressful. We didn't have much longer of a time period to decide where my dad was going to live, and that decision was made in like a day, and that's not the best plan. So I certainly get that, and if you can just have those plans in place and have had those conversations with people that can help you, it's so much easier. I think, like you were mentioning, with all of those other things going on in a family, everyone's emotions are so frayed in those moments too, where people that might otherwise have had some patience for the stories or wanted to help curate, legacy boxes and all of that, those things go out the window because everybody is managing so much at once with heavy emotions.
Yeah, because, like my grandpa, he had Alzheimer's, and he had brittle diabetes, which means that he, could go really up and really down very easily. And so, it turned into a whole, that was all that could be managed. We couldn't, the family really didn't think about a whole lot else than the crisis after crisis of health that was happening.
Yeah.
And so being able to think about him and his stories and his big laugh and the way that he always, sat around and also loved history, which is why, my mom does, and all of that stuff, we couldn't even think about that stuff. And when he finally passed away, I pulled away from the hospital, and it was just this rush of stories that just kind of came into my mind. All of these just kind of mental pictures of him just one after the other laughing, and all of the things that I hadn't thought about in such a long time because we were just
in the moment
overwhelmed.
of crisis.
Yeah, with that crisis. So, and then trying to make other decisions through that about the things in your life and whether to sell the house and all that's too much. It's too much.
Yeah. So don't wait for perfect. Let's get ready
the home, if you're waiting, the house might not get prepped for sale properly. That could, cost you money, honestly, if that doesn't happen, or if you stay too long to where you can't take care of it.
Things get neglected.
Yep. So there's definitely other costs of waiting. Another cost of waiting is emotional, right? Sometimes it's resentment, guilt, tension between adult children and aging parents. That's a tough one.
Yeah, I think that's what we were talking about. Everybody's just on emotional edge in that moment, and nobody has the time or patience.
Yeah, and I think kids sometimes they can get frustrated because they're in that generation where they're taking care of their kids. They're working. They have, husbands or wives, families to take care of, and then parents to take care of. And it's not that they don't want to. It just feels like overwhelming stress. And so that comes out sometimes as, just wanting to get through it. And so
your kids will be so thankful for your proactive planning and you letting them know what those future plans are so they can help you. I think the hardest part is when adult kids are willing and want to help you. They're also busy with their life, so it's hard, but there's no actual decisions being made. And so it's kind of a circle of, how can we help? Well, we're fine. Well, this or that, it's just a vicious cycle that a lot isn't getting accomplished and builds everyone's frustration.
Yeah, and that's not what you want, is to, have some kind of rift with the family over that kind of stuff. So if you start early and you can say, hey, I want to come, look at the pictures, come over, we'll have dinner and let's look at the pictures one night, or let's, look at grandma's, whatever jewelry and talk about that, or let's spend some time just on some things that are the harder things, honestly.
Yeah.
They don't need to help you clean out your spatulas unless you want them to, and they, love doing that. But some of that harder stuff, if you spend some time, they're happy to do that.
Absolutely.
Most kids are happy to do that. They just need to feel like there's a purpose and a plan, and it's going forward, and they're happy to spend time talking about that stuff. But
Absolutely. So this next section, I love changing your mindset from ready to willing. And I love that mindset shift. Just switching all that. I'm not ready to, am I willing to do little things? You're not waiting for everything, all the stars to be aligned perfectly to get started. It's just a question, am I willing to do 10 minutes today? Am I willing to go meet with an estate attorney? Am I willing to go to a lunch and learn at a community to take a tour? You're not defining whether you are or aren't ready. Yeah. It's like you're just information gathering. Am I willing to dip my toe in the water?
Yeah. And maybe it's something like you sit and write all the questions you might have about what it, like if you're really feeling overwhelmed, what are all your questions that you might have? And then just picking one and figuring out how to answer that, in a baby step, or, like one little piece of learning that could go towards answering that question.
Yeah. Yeah. So you don't have to set that definite time frame or commit to anything. Just, am I willing to get started a little bit on my things at the house? Am I willing to gather some information to plan that next step? Am I willing to be dreamy and choose my next stage of life?
Yeah. So. The emotional arc of starting is number one, resistance, where you're like, oh gosh, I don't know, I'm not ready for that. Resistance, then discomfort, like you're stepping out and putting your toe in the water. Are you willing to go do one or two things and it might not feel great? Yeah. So then discomfort, and then clarity, because as you do those things, you learn things. We've learned so much since we've been in this process of helping people. So then you'll get some clarity, and then that clarity will give you confidence to move forward. And so if you pass through that resistance to discomfort, you will end up with confidence at the end. So discomfort goes to clarity, goes to confidence.
We see that arc repeat itself so many times through our life. Think about like the first day of school or the first day at a new job. All of those things, you're going through that. Like, no, I don't want to go try that. No, I don't want to try this new sport. And then it's uncomfortable because you don't know what you're doing. You don't know the other people's names. You don't know any of that. But then you're like, okay, this is cool. And then you have confidence in that and you look forward to doing it. So just like with anything else, don't stop before trying, because at the end is that clarity and confidence.
Yeah. So action creates clarity. So getting through that, for that discomfort, really, that's actions. So actions, exactly like what you were talking about, Heather, go check out a couple of places, like go look at houses, smaller ranches, condos. Go have somebody come and talk to you about your house and what you might need to do with it. If you need a great realtor, let us know. We can help you with that. But all kinds of little things that you can do. Yeah. Clean out a drawer.
Set up a donation pickup.
Yep.
Yeah. All the things.
All of those little steps forward towards it.
Yeah. I have this little quote. It just says, "It's okay if it feels hard. Do it anyway."
Right.
So I think that's what we're saying.
Yes.
It definitely will feel hard.
Right.
To get started, but do it anyway.
Yeah. Progress over perfection. Yep. Right. 80% done is better. Done is better than not done. So.
Yes. Done is better than perfect.
Yep.
And it's never about all or nothing. Doing these little steps are not suddenly like it's done, it's over, decision made.
Well, and you don't need to have the full plan. Like you don't need to have the full plan. You make an appointment with an estate planner, then that's fine. Yeah. There's going to be more things that you have to do to get down that road, but just making the appointment. You don't have to have the full plan.
Yeah. Yeah. One little thing each day, for sure. So normalize that in your life, building small habits, and whether that is, I think I love that you said that, making the appointment, because a lot of times we're talking about the stuff and we're like 10 minutes a day on decluttering type things, but that 10 minutes sometimes can be a list of appointments you need to make or someone you need to talk to. Doesn't always have to be just the stuff. There's a lot of pieces to just move down that list.
Yeah. So you'll hear us say this over and over again. Just start with, 10 minutes or 15 minutes. Do something tiny and manageable. Sort one drawer, walk through the house with a trash bag and just pick up
that quick 100.
Yep, do the quick 100.
Yep.
Get a maybe bin, and things that you're not sure, just have a maybe bin. And so have a donate bin. Just have that somewhere in your house so that you can, as you're using things or you pick up something and you go, I don't ever use this, then it goes right over there. If I put on clothes in my closet that I know they just don't make me feel good and I'm not going to wear them again, they go right in the donate bin. You don't have to spend an entire day cleaning out, your closet. You can also do that in ways that are fast.
Part of your day.
Part of your day.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So this other stat we have says 60% of adults over 60 say they have too much stuff. So everyone knows they have too much stuff. It's
60% of them are willing to say it.
They'll say it out loud. It's just finding a way to start. So I don't think the argument is, no, I don't have too much. And we find that when we meet people, you say, what brought you to our downsizing class? I have too much stuff. Everybody that has too much knows they do. It's how do I start and not, procrastinate and wait for the perfect time to do that.
Yep. So just find your way that feels doable to you, whatever that looks like, whether it's 5 things a day, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever that is. Find what's doable to you. Give yourself permission to, pause and take a break if you're feeling like you've done too much a little bit. You've got a little bit of decision fatigue around that. That's a thing for real. And so if you're feeling like, I can't make more decisions, then go celebrate the wins that you have done. Like whatever you have done, how many decisions you've made, you cleaned out that drawer, you made an appointment, go celebrate that, get yourself an ice cream or something.
Yeah. And if you did start, as we, recommend highly with that dream, that's your future you. That's your future life. So when you're waiting for that perfect moment, the question you can ask is, will future me thank me for just getting started? Am I willing to start down this path for this, future dream? Really delaying and just sitting in the same spot doesn't serve your future self or the future generations after you either.
Yeah. Show up for yourself, really.
Yeah.
Show up for yourself.
Yeah. We spend so much of our lives showing up for other people, employers or teachers or our kids or our parents when they needed help, our neighbors, our church. We show up so, people, our nature is to show up and be there for other people, but showing up for yourself is the most important part, and it's usually the one we all put on the back burner.
The bottom.
Yeah, so move that to the forefront and just look at what can I do today for future me, and that's likely not waiting for a perfect time.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
So, so reframe what your future is going to look like. You're going to have less things to manage. You're going to have more freedom to say yes to opportunities, whatever's, hey, somebody wants to travel or whatever, and you're good. You can go. You've done the things that you needed to do.
Go visiting family and staying with them for, trips and time to catch up, all of those things.
And life will feel less chaotic. It'll feel more peaceful, more in control. There's so many things that we can't control and things that happen that we wished hadn't happened.
Yeah.
There's so much that we can't control, but we can control some of this stuff. And so do the stuff that you can control, and it makes you feel better.
Yeah. And if you're seeking out information, that means that you're living with that thought of what you should do. And if you do it, you release that mind energy of thinking.
Yeah. It can weigh on you when you should be doing something and you aren't doing it.
Yeah.
So.
And you become the person yep, I already did that early this morning, done for the day.
Yeah.
You become that person quicker than you think. And then you're ready.
88% of adult children say their parents' delayed planning made things harder. I am one of those 88%.
As am I.
Yeah. It and I don't think that was on purpose at all.
Absolutely not.
But
Yeah.
it doesn't change the fact that it made things so much more difficult. And so, so we're saying, us now too, all of us need to get ready. So it's not just, wait until you're, in a place where you're older or whatever. All of us, these things that we're saying that you need to do, we all need to do them. We all need to have our paperwork in order.
Yeah.
We all need to have our stuff organized and not be keeping things that we don't need. And so all of us need to do that.
Yeah, my husband and I were just talking over the weekend about, some things we need to do to just have things more prepared and done. And, I felt in the conversation, we both felt like we were just kind of kicking that can. And, so we ended with setting a time frame of we're having, this done by this date. And it just felt like, okay, we're on the same page. We gave the time it needed to get it done, and it will be, and that's just so much better than floating through, not having that expectation between each other or for ourselves. Like, okay, now I know when my deadline is.
Yeah, calendar block that. Put it on the calendar.
Yep.
Put it on the calendar to, clean out the garage, or put it on the calendar to have the kids come over and look through some things, or whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
So when we have talked to our clients who have done this earlier, they feel like they aren't rushed, that they just were able to tell the stories, spend the time. They just feel more really peaceful about what that process looked like, versus when we have clients who are doing this out of crisis. It isn't peaceful at all for anybody. It just isn't very peaceful.
I think the ones who have done it in that intentional way too, back to that emotional arc, when they land in their new place, they're at the end of that emotional arc, so they feel confident in that, and those are the ones that we see immediately living like a vibrant life and settled and loving their new place and getting involved, whatever that looks like, or doing whatever that dream was for them. But when you wait, then you're doing it at the beginning of that emotional arc, when you're scared and it's uncomfortable and it, it's not the good part of it.
You never get through to the confident.
And so you kind of land there with that feeling of uncomfortable and, doubting the process. And we do see sometimes that takes a while to come out of that and feel like this was an amazing choice. And so if we can help more people get through it to that confident in their decision and ready to do it, that is what I would hope for.
Yeah, I agree. That's such a great point, because the other thing is if you have a future that you're looking towards and you really spend some time figuring out what that looks like, if you wait too long, you use that up. You use up that time. And so you might land in a place, a ranch, or if you wanted to go to independent living or something, you might land there, but you aren't having time to enjoy it because you've spent so much time getting ready or trying to find the perfect time that you don't get to live it in it and enjoy it.
Right. We see that, and I don't love it.
I don't love it either.
Yeah.
Because we know it can be different, because we've seen the other side of it. And so, and we've lived the part where it wasn't great. So we really, really want that for you. I think that's what our goal is in all of these conversations that we have, is for you to spend just the best time that you can, making these changes, the best time with your family, enjoying what you've just, created once you get to the next place, being able to enjoy that. I think if we can help people do that, then our hearts will be full from that.
Absolutely. And I think the one question, if you're listening and thinking, okay, I'm thinking about downsizing, but I'm going to do it after whatever that fill in the blank is for you. I think the one thing you could take away is just to really be honest with yourself, whether that is a valid reason that needs to be that, or if it's just kicking the can down the road. And either way, what can you do between now and that time frame that you set to be ready for that to happen?
And what other little pieces could you be to be? I mean, you should just be moving forward in your life every day to something. Like there should be some, something that you're moving forward just a little bit.
1% better.
Yeah, right. 1%. There's no perfect time, but maybe the perfect time was starting a year ago. And now, now it's just start now. So there's no perfect time to start.
Yeah.
Change your mind from I'm not ready to I'm willing.
Yeah, I love that so much.
Yeah.
So if you are moving into I'm willing to listen more, we would love it if you followed our show and kept listening to more episodes. And if you're willing to get started and you need some resources, you can always find those on our website, downsizingroadmap.com, and we will look forward to talking to you again next episode.
Yep.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks for joining us on the Downsizing Roadmap podcast. If you found this episode helpful, be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with someone who might need a little downsizing inspiration. Have questions or ideas for future episodes? Visit us on our website, www.downsizingroadmap.com. Until next time, let's keep simplifying and moving forward.